I'm going to share something with you today that I'm speaking about at a conference this week to several hundred people. I'm just going to unpack a little bit of that and share it with you really about how to use your communication to lead the people that are on your team, those that are direct reports to you. So lean in, get ready, here we go.
Welcome to Advance with Mike Acker, the podcast designed to help entrepreneurs, business leaders, and professionals alike break through barriers by improving their practical leadership skills and increasing confidence in speaking. Your host is a best-selling author, executive coach, and founder of the Advance Public Speaking School and Advantage Publishing Group, two companies dedicated to providing an edge for leaders. Find out more about Mike at mikeacker.com. Now here's your host, Mike Acker.
Welcome to Advance. I'm excited to share something with you about communication and leadership. If you go back and watch the very first video of this YouTube channel, really of this podcast and everything that I'm doing with Advance with Mike Acker, you'll see that I'm a huge believer that leadership and communication go hand in hand. And so when I'm doing these different talks and bringing on different guests, I'm often making that connection between the two. So your leadership and your communication go hand in hand. Let me quickly say this. If your speaking is higher, then people will assume that your leadership is equally as high. But if your speaking is lower, and even though you're a great leader and able to get things done, then people will assume that your leadership is much lower. Now, today, what I'm going to be doing is walking you through something that I am going through in quite detail this coming Friday with a group of 450 people at a conference. So I'm looking forward to doing this, and I want to share a little bit of this with you. And I'm not going to pack everything, but I'll give you enough that you can think through how you can speak and lead to your direct reports. So here's the big idea on this, that to speak and lead to your direct reports, I want you to think and lead with questions. Now, I actually do a video about this in the past, but I'm going to apply some more principles here and unpack why this is so powerful. First of all, I'm reminded when I think about questions of this great story about a reporter who got a chance to go on 2 dates with 2 different men who were of celebrity status in the 1990s in the UK. Now, she goes out and the first night, and she is just wined and dined, and they dance and they talk, and the night is absolutely fantastic. One of those dates where you just go, everything was absolute bliss. So the next day, people are saying, how did it go? What did you think? What was he like? And she responded, oh my gosh, he is the absolute most interesting person I've ever met. They go, wow, that's incredible. What are you thinking about the date that is coming on later on tonight? And she said, I'm excited, but you know what? There's no way this guy is going to be half as interesting as the first guy. Then later on that evening, she goes out to dinner and she goes out to get wined and dined, and she goes out dancing and all the different things that happen in an exciting, adventurous date. And the next day, her friends say, what was it like? Was he as good as the first guy? Was he amazing? How was it? And she goes, wow, he made me feel like I was the most interesting person ever. I love the contrast of these 2 different gentlemen. One told a whole bunch about his adventures and about his life and about all the things that he knew and all the things he had accomplished. And it was fascinating. It was really good. Sometimes I like to listen to some of these celebrity autobiographies, and they've lived some interesting lives. Some amazing things have happened to them. It's like, wow, really, this guy is so interesting. On the second night, instead of telling her everything about himself, he asked her, and he asked questions that really showed how she had led an interesting life. And those questions changed the whole dynamic of the evening. And which one do you think she wanted to go out on a date with again? Obviously the person that made her feel like she was interesting, that raised up her value. So when we go to speak and lead to direct reports, remember those 2 go hand in hand. Often we are tempted to speak and tell them everything. But instead of speaking to tell them the answer and tell them how we have a great answer to the problem, instead, if we can speak in questions and lead them through our questions, we will actually give greater direction to our direct report. See, often we think to direct a direct report, we have to tell them what they need to do. But really, that's not the case, and you'll see why here. But really, we can ask them the questions that can lead them to them telling themselves what they should do. And there are great benefits from this. Let me walk you through 3 P's. The first P is the psychology, which doesn't sound like a P word, but it is, as you know. But as my son is learning to read, he gets confused in some of these really odd words. But psychology with a P. The psychology of questions goes like this, that your brain, your mind, is wired to engage in active modes when you are being asked questions, but in passive mode when you are just receiving information. So your brain is getting ready, whether it's active or passive, to respond in that mode. Passive, it's just taking in. And there's not as much muscle response. There's not as much mental engagement. But in questions, you are there. You are present. Think about it being like this. Are you a passenger in the car? You're in passive mode. You're just receiving the ride. Or are you the driver of the vehicle? You're in active mode. You're taking the vehicle forward. So when you ask a question of a direct report, what happens? Their mind shifts, their literal brain mechanisms shifts, and they go from passive over to active. They go from disengaged to engaged. They go from passenger to now co-driver to potential driver. So if you want more ownership, then ask more questions. If you want more engagement, ask more questions. So when you ask questions, all kinds of things happen in this active mode. For example, when you ask a question, instead of just telling them what to do, and you start putting it back on them and leading them through a series of questions, which I'll get to here in just a moment, what happens is they start having to take ownership of the issue. If they come in and say, what should I do here? And you say, this is what you should do, then they go and they do your idea. But if they come in and say, what should I do here? And then you ask questions to lead them to get to a spot where they think, I know what I need to do. I get it. I have an idea. Then they're more likely to work the idea because they came up with it. If I come up with an idea versus someone comes up with an idea with me, then I want to prove the worth of my idea. I'm going to work my idea more. I'm going to believe in my idea more than when someone just says, this is what you should do. I believe in what I come up with. When you ask your direct reports how they should respond and you engage with them with questions, it gives them more ownership. A lot of the complaints that I've seen in management comes from disengaged or those employees who lack ownership. They just show up, clock in, clock out. They're just going through their routines. They're there for really their own reasons, not really to contribute. But when you ask questions, you are teaching them that there's a bigger aspect to what they're doing. So the psychology of questions says ask because it gives more ownership. It gives more engagement. It gives active participants. But there is a problem, and that's the second P right there. There's a big problem. Here's how I illustrate it. When I was in my 20s, I hired my first executive assistant. Now, up to this point in time, I've been rocking it, learning how to do everything my own. I mean, I knew the copier, I knew the phone system, I knew everything because by necessity, I had to work the system. It was all down to me. But as we grew, I was able to hire someone in. And when I hired that person in, initially, they didn't know how to do the things that I knew to do, as well as I knew to do it. So when I trained this new staff member, this new team member, it was very difficult because not only was I taking my time to still do the activity, but I was taking longer to do the activity because I had to teach someone else how to do it. There's a problem. And same is true with question asking. See, if you come in and ask me, what should I do? And I say, this is what you should do. That's pretty simple. And it's kind of enjoyable. There's a little bit of pride in it. Like, I get to tell you what to do here. But when you come in and I'm discussing something with you, and this is actually what I do in my public speaking coaching. When someone gives a presentation, I first ask them, what did you see that you should do? What did you like about what you did? So I'm putting some of the onus back onto them before I tell them my own perspective and go through our coaching session. So when you have someone come in and they ask you for something, it elevates your pride. And then also it elevates this sense of time. You are able to quickly get it off your chest. Here, go do this. When someone comes in and asks you a question and you decide to lead with questions and speak and lead with questions, direct them through questions, now it's going to take more time and some humility. In fact, they might come up with an answer that you would have given, but now they are going to get the recognition for the answer that you already knew from the first place. So there's a drop in humility or a drop in pride. There's some humility that comes in. And it took longer. I mean, you could have told them the same thing. But over the course of time, this problem really gets replaced by the benefits. Because once again, the psychology is so powerful. So you have the psychology of question asking. You have the problems of question asking. So what's the process of question asking? How do you go about doing this? If you're saying, Mike, I used to do that and I've gotten away from it. Or, I've never really thought about that. I didn't have a manager that led me with questions, so I don't know what that really looks like. How do I go about doing that in my own leadership journey? Let me take you through a 3-step process. First of all, go slow. So if at this point in time, you've been the answer teller, you've been the person who says, this is how you do it, this is how you do it, go do this, go do that, go do this. And you come back from this conference and all of a sudden you flip the switch. And now you become, instead of the answer teller, the question asker. And all of a sudden people think, what's happening? Are you a contestant on Jeopardy? And you're answering to everything. What is Australia? Which happens to be the most common question asked on Jeopardy. How do I know? Because I looked it up. So don't just flip the switch, go slow. Second, go methodical. Have a way, a system to do this. Go systematically from beginning to the end. Here's what this looks like. Let me give you a parallel from parenting. In parenting, there are the 4 C's of parenting. And there's a lot of different C's, but these are the 4 C's of your actions, your behavior towards your kids. In the first stage of their life, you are a commander. That's your role in their life. You are hopefully a benevolent commander. So you are kindly telling them what to do. But you are the boss. You're in charge. In fact, you say no so much because you're protecting them. You say no so much that eventually it becomes their favorite word to say. You are telling them to go eat this and go do that. And you are helping them have boundaries and you're helping them understanding what is right and what is wrong. And you're the commander. Now this slowly shifts in around the upper elementary and early middle school years, hopefully, to no longer commander, but coach. In fact, if you're a parent and you're thinking, I'm still commanding your 18-year-old, then be careful of what's going to happen when they get out of the house. So you got to switch over to this aspect of coach. And now this is where you are helping them see the pros and cons. You're helping them weigh the different issues. Well, if you do that, then you will not have this. And if you do this, the consequences are this. And you're helping them understand what happens if they make different choices. So you're asking questions like, well, would you rather this or would you rather this? And you're helping them understand this. Now, there are some still strict rules as you're a parent with a 12-year-old or so, but you're helping them grow into maturity through the questions that you ask. From coach, you become a counselor. As kids get older, they lean on their parents less and less and less. Now, at this stage, you're really getting them ready to go out and do things on their own. And so at this stage, you are asking them, well, that's a decision you can make. What do you think you should do? You're not weighing the pros and cons. You're just helping them process what they think is a good idea. And then, because they're still in your care, you are helping them manage the outcome. Okay, well, you chose this and it didn't go the way you thought, or you chose this and it went better than you thought. And then you're helping them manage the outcome as you're still responsible for them. And then the 4th stage, consultant. There comes a point in time where kids move out of the house and they go off and they come back to their parents, and provided that the relationship is a good relationship, my dad and I have a good relationship. And so I understand this stage where my dad is my consultant and I don't even have to pay him. I go to him, throw out my different ideas. It happens to be a lawyer as well, so that's handy. And I throw out my different ideas. I throw out my different questions, and he gives me different response. And I can take it, I can leave it, I can push back on it, and I've done all of those. And I know that as a consultant for many different companies in communication, emotional intelligence, and leadership in some different areas, I know that sometimes the people that hire me don't specifically take everything I have to say. And that's okay, because I'm just a consultant. And this point in time, that person is really independent. They're performing well and doing well on their own. Now, let's take those 4 C's of parenting and let's apply them over to the workplace. Now, I know that you're not the boss of your kids. Oh, sorry, you are the boss of your kids. I know that you're not the parent of your employees, of your direct reports, of your team. Unless you are, and that would make an interesting family dynamic, or unless they treat you like one, which sometimes happens even if they're older than you. So how do we apply these 4 C's over to being a great leader, being a great speaker into their lives? What does it look like? Well, early on, you do want to command. You want to reinforce boundaries. Look, this is how we do things. This is what's going on. And you're really taking those essential areas, those life and death issues, the values of the company, the systems of the company. You say, look, I want you to learn this. We have this policy in place, and we have it in place for this reason. Now, in the workplace, because we're working with adults and not kids, that command stage should be very, very short. If you're commanding for a long period of time, then you're not leading, you're micromanaging. So get out of the command stage and get to the coach. Now, early on, we get into the coaching for employees. It takes a while for kids, but with employees, it happens faster, or people who are on a team. And we start asking the questions, well, would you rather this or would you rather this? And you're helping them weigh, and you're helping them organize their schedule, and you're helping them organize their priorities, and you're helping them organize their KPIs. When they're coming up with goals, you're helping them. Okay, so if you have that goal, what does that mean you're not going to be able to do? Because you can't do everything all at once. And if you do this, then what happens over here? And so you're really working on this with them. And then you are going into a counselor mode. Okay, now they're hopefully a high performing team member. And now they are coming up with ideas that maybe are outside of what you are going for. And that's what you're going for, right? That's actually what you want, even though sometimes we don't think it is, or sometimes we think it is and we don't act like it is. Ultimately, we want people who contribute, who grow, who are doing things further and going beyond what we have. I have team members who challenge me, and sometimes I'm like, I don't really know if I want to do that. But they challenge me, and they say, I want to try this. And sometimes I've said, well, is that the thing you think you should do? And we'll walk through these questions. And ultimately, they go out and make some decisions, and we help them manage the outcome. Now, once they're a fully trained team member, they go out and they're on their own. They're performing according to the situation that has been set up, and you provide the expert feedback as a consultant. What's interesting about these 4 different stages, you can have team members at all 4 different stages. I mean, individually at all 4 stages. Like my sister has 6 kids, and so at different points in time, she's had a kid or 2 at every single stage. So not every single person is at the same stage. Don't treat people like they're all needing to be coached or consulted or counseled or commanded. Find out where they are and get them to the place, into that next stage, and work yourself into that next spot. Now, here's what happens when you take this process and you go through it in this kind of methodical way. People feel honored. People feel respected. People feel like they're more engaged. Right now in the United States, we have something called the Great Resignation, or the Great Reshuffle. And there's all kinds of different reasons why people are thinking about different jobs. But one of them is because they're not engaged. So how can you engage people? How can you direct your direct reports? How can you do it in a way that really honors them and helps them feel like you respect them and that you know them and that they know what they're doing? You can lead with questions. So next time someone comes in, start leading with questions. Well, how do we do that? You go slow. you go methodically, and you go equipped. How do we do this task? If I were to say, hey, go mow the lawn, you would need a tool to go mow the lawn, a lawnmower. And so you want a good tool. Here's a good tool for you. It's called lair or a lair. I call it sometimes flying a kite, depending on the different situations that we're in. It's used in research. It's used in sales by a gentleman named Jack Carew. It's used in research and interviews and all kinds of different places. I talk about it in my book on emotional intelligence as well. So if you want a deeper dive, you can check that book out. Right now, I think it's on Kindle for $2.99 or something like that. And you can check that out. What does it look like to lead with questions? Well, say we have a direct report come to us, and his name is Ricardo. That was my best friend growing up in Mexico. So say Ricardo comes to me, and I'm the leader of the team that he's on. And he says, Mike, I got this issue. What should I do about it? Instead of answer telling, what do? I ask a question. I say, well, that's a fascinating situation. Tell me more. That's my first question. Tell me more. And then as he tells me, I am going to actively listen. So I ask a question, and then I actively listen. And so I'm really there. I'm not thinking about what I'm going to say. I'm just really trying to understand. I'm nodding. I'm smiling. Okay. Tell me more. And then I'm going to, when he ends, I'm going to explore with another question. And so, okay, I see what you're happening here. Actually, back it up. After I actively listen, I'm going to acknowledge and say, okay, so I see what you're saying here. It's a frustrating situation because the team that is over here didn't meet their deadline, and so now it's causing a problem for you. Is that right? So you're feeling the tension and you're feeling the pressure. And so Ricardo says, yeah, that's right. Then I'm going to explore more. I say, what have you done so far? So I'm going to explore by asking more questions. Now, pause right here. Often what happens is someone comes in and says, here's the situation, and we say, well, here's the answer telling. Or we do start with a question, but we don't lead with questions. So here's the situation. We respond with a question, what have you done? As they start talking, we are already formulating the response. I want you to really, really have patience with this and really go around the circle a couple different times. So in the case of Ricardo, I have asked him a question. I've really actively listened. I've acknowledged to make sure that I'm understanding where he's at. And then I'm going to explore more with another question. And then I'm going to actively listen. So I'm really 100% right there with him, which respects him, gives him dignity. Then I'm going to acknowledge him again so he understands that I understand the emotions of what's happening. I understand the dynamics. And I'm going to ask questions. What's amazing in this, if I go around this circle several different times or a few different times or a lot of different times, often the answer is revealed in the process. And if it's not, and really we're at the command or coach stage and I need a lot of input into what he's saying, then once I fully understand it, I'm helping him understand the process for troubleshooting. And so I'm going to go all the way around, and then eventually I'm going to respond and say, okay, now knowing everything, this is what I believe would be helpful. And then I might throw a question on top of that. What do you think? How do you see that happening? And I've respected him. Now, in all of this, I am doing something absolutely essential. I am not just giving him a fish. I'm teaching him how to fish. So if you want to direct reports with power, with authenticity, with impact, with engagement, then you can speak and lead with questions. What a great time walking through this with you. And I'm so grateful that you are part of my channel and part of my podcast. Would you please take a moment to subscribe, like, comment, share this with somebody else, and then tune in next time as we continue through topics on how to advance your life, your career, your mission, everything that you're part of.
Thanks for listening to Advance with Mike Acker, a podcast designed to provide an edge for leaders through improving practical leadership skills and increasing confidence in speaking. Mike is a best-selling author and business owner who has helped many leaders increase their skills and their confidence, propelling them to new heights in their personal and professional endeavors. Join an incredible group of professionals taking the steps to become better leaders at connect.stepstoadvance.com. Don't forget to rate, review, and subscribe so you never miss an episode.